The fluorescent lights of the diner buzzed with a persistence that matched Nora's headache. 2 in the morning, and she was still here, hunched over her laptop in a cracked vinyl booth that smelled faintly of disinfectant and decades of spilled coffee. The cursor blinked mockingly on her screen, a rhythm that seemed to say failure, failure, failure with each pulse. She refreshed her email. 3 new messages, 2 automated rejections, 1 spam promising to enlarge something she didn't have. Nora Whitmore was 29 years old, honey blonde hair pulled into a ponytail that had given up any pretense of professionalism hours ago. Hazel eyes rimmed with the kind of exhaustion that came from 6 weeks of sleeping on a friend's couch and 8 months of systematic destruction. She wore a cardigan with a small hole near the hem, jeans that had seen better days, and the expression of someone who'd learned that rock bottom had a basement. The waitress appeared, coffee pot in hand. 3rd refill, maybe 4th. Nora had lost count. "You okay, honey?" The woman's name tag read Diane. She had kind eyes and the weary solidarity of someone who'd seen her share of 2 a.m. crisis moments. Fine. The lie came automatically, smoothly, the way all lies did when you'd been practicing them for months. "Thank you." Diane refilled the cup anyway, and Nora felt the familiar sting of gratitude for small kindnesses. Even at rock bottom, especially at rock bottom, she couldn't stop being polite, couldn't stop saying thank you, couldn't stop trying to make everyone else comfortable with her discomfort. People pleaser, her therapist had called it, before Nora had to stop going to therapy because her bank account hit $247, and therapy cost significantly more than that. The rain started, a soft percussion against the diner windows that made the world outside blur into watercolor streaks of streetlights and darkness. Nora watched it, feeling the distant tug of something that might have been poetry once, back when she'd had the luxury of feelings that weren't just survival instinct. 8 months ago, she'd caught her fiancé in bed with her half-sister. In her bed, in the house that had been her childhood home, the one place that was supposed to be safe. Trevor Hamilton, with his practiced smile and his promises of forever, wrapped around Vanessa Whitmore, who'd always been taller, blonder, colder, better at taking what she wanted. 6 months ago, her mother had died. The will reading revealed that the house, the only thing of value in their modest family, had been changed in those final medicated weeks. Vanessa had convinced their dying mother that she deserved it more. Vanessa always did have a talent for persuasion. 4 months ago, Nora had been fired from the marketing coordinator position she'd held for 3 years. Vanessa, newly promoted to senior marketing director at the same firm, had planted evidence of stolen client lists. The accusation was investigated and dismissed, but the damage was done. Nora was let go quietly, and Vanessa got her promotion loudly. 6 weeks ago, Jenna Park, her best friend since college, had opened her cramped apartment and offered the couch without hesitation, without judgment, without the questions that Nora couldn't bear to answer. Now, here she was, applying to jobs she was overqualified for and being rejected anyway, because gaps in employment told stories that interview panels didn't want to hear. The laptop screen blurred. Nora blinked hard. She was not going to cry in a diner at 2 in the morning. She had some dignity left. Not much, but some. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. "Still out? Be safe. Love you." Nora typed back, "Heading home soon. Love you too." Home. The word felt borrowed, like wearing someone else's shoes. She closed the laptop, left a $20 bill she couldn't afford on the table, and walked out into the rain. The next morning arrived with the cruelty of sunlight and Jenna's cheerful humming from the kitchen. Nora extracted herself from the tangle of blankets on the couch, her neck protesting the angle she'd slept in, her phone showing 7:30 and 1 new email. Another rejection. She showered quickly, dressed in her remaining interview outfit, Target clearance rack special, and made a decision. Today, she would splurge. Today, she would go to Morrison's Coffee, the place with the good espresso and the prices that made her wince, and she would have one small rebellion against the universe that had decided she deserved nothing. Morrison's was busy with the morning rush, all polished professionals and casual wealth. Nora felt like an imposter the moment she walked in, but she'd had 8 months of practice at ignoring that feeling. She ordered a latte, $6. Her stomach clenched, but she smiled at the barista and didn't apologize for existing. While she waited, she checked her phone. Email from a recruiter. Her heart jumped, then crashed as she read, "Unfortunately, the position has been filled internally." She was so focused on the screen, on swallowing the disappointment, that she didn't see the man until she'd walked directly into him. Hot liquid, expensive fabric, her reflexive gasp of horror. Coffee everywhere, on him, on her, on the pristine floor. "Oh God, I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking, I'll pay for the cleaning, Hey." His voice cut through her spiral, low and surprisingly calm. "It's okay, breathe." She looked up, and up. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with dark brown hair that looked professionally styled but naturally thick, and eyes that were the color of a winter sky, gray-blue and startling in their intensity. The suit he wore was bespoke, she could tell even through the coffee. Stains, the kind of tailoring that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. A watch on his wrist caught the light, complicated face, Swiss, probably worth more than her car had been before she'd sold it. He was looking at her with something that wasn't anger. Amusement, maybe? Curiosity. "I just ruined your suit," she managed, horrified. "That's easily $5,000 of..." "Closer to 6. He smiled, and there was a scar through his left eyebrow that made the expression slightly crooked. But who's counting? The suit had it coming, too pretentious for a Tuesday. She let out a startled laugh, half sob, completely inappropriate. "Here." He grabbed napkins from the counter, handed her half, started dabbing at his jacket with the other half. "See, survivable. I've been through worse." "I don't know how," Nora said weakly, but she took the napkins and tried to clean her own shirt, which was beyond saving. An older man in an equally expensive suit approached, phone to his ear. "Grayson, the 10 o'clock is here, conference room B." The man, Grayson apparently, glanced at his watch. "Tell them 5 minutes." The associate looked at Nora, at the coffee disaster, and his expression shifted to something knowing. "Of course, Miss Whitmore, whenever you're ready." He walked away before Nora could correct him. Grayson's eyebrows rose. "Whitmore?" Her brain, desperate and exhausted and so tired of losing, made a choice. A terrible choice. An insane choice. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Sorry, I'm early, and messy." His eyes sharpened, assessing. He knew. Of course he knew. That something flickered across his face. Interest, maybe. And he didn't call her out. "Walk with me," he said instead, and it wasn't quite a question. She should have run, should have apologized again and fled. Instead, she followed him to a quiet corner table, her heart hammering against her ribs. "So, Miss Whitmore," he sat, gestured for her to do the same. "Tell me about your consulting business." She had no consulting business. She had nothing. But she had spent 3 years building campaigns, writing copy, understanding what made people believe in things. And right now, she needed him to believe in her. "I help companies tell authentic stories," she said, and her voice was steadier than she felt. Not manipulation, connection. The kind of marketing that remembers there are real people on the other side of the transaction. "Interesting." He leaned back, studying her with those winter sky eyes. "Specific example?" She thought of her old firm, the campaign Vanessa had taken credit for. Local bakery, family-owned, struggling against corporate chains. Everyone told them to compete on price. I told them to compete on legacy. Interviewed the grandmother who started it, her immigrant story, her recipes passed down. We built the campaign around her hands kneading dough. Sales increased 40% in 3 months. It was true, all of it, except the part where she'd gotten any credit. And the bakery was? Morales, Brooklyn. Let him fact-check. It was real. He was quiet for a long moment, and she knew this was it. He'd dismiss her, call security maybe, and she'd add this humiliation to the collection. Instead, he said, "You're not here for a pitch meeting." Her face burned. "No." "But you need something?" "Yes." "And you walked into me, quite literally, and decided to gamble." She met his eyes. "I have nothing left to lose." The truth of it must have shown, raw and desperate, because his expression shifted. Not pity, something else. Recognition, maybe. Everyone has something to lose, he said quietly, but I respect the audacity. He pulled out a business card, slid it across the table. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Elliot Grayson, Grayson Capital Group. Her hand trembled as she took it. I need someone authentic, he continued. Someone who understands what it's like to be underestimated. And you, Miss Whitmore, just proved you're willing to take risks when your back's against the wall. That's a quality I can work with. She stared at him, not understanding. Meet me tomorrow, same place, 8 a.m. We'll discuss terms of an arrangement I think could benefit us both. He stood, left her sitting there with his business card in her hand and the taste of possibility on her tongue. She looked down at the embossed letters. Elliot Grayson, CEO, Grayson Capital Group. She'd just lied to a billionaire, and somehow, impossibly, he wanted to see her again. 48 hours later, Nora stood in the lobby of the Grayson Capital building and wondered if she'd finally lost her mind entirely. She'd spent those 2 days researching Elliot Grayson with the obsessive thoroughness of someone who knew she was vastly out of her depth. Forbes articles, Society page photographs, net worth estimated at $1.2 billion. Venture capitalist, CEO, known for aggressive acquisitions and an almost preternatural ability to identify companies on the verge of breakthrough. 34 years old, never married, rarely photographed with the same woman twice. And somehow, impossibly, she was about to meet him in his office to discuss an arrangement. Jenna had insisted on lending her the nice interview dress, navy blue and carefully pressed, paired with shoes that pinched Nora's toes but looked appropriately professional. She'd practiced what she'd say, rehearsed responses to questions she imagined he'd ask, nearly canceled 4 separate times. But her bank account still showed $247, and desperation was a powerful motivator. The elevator ride to the 43rd floor felt like ascending to another world. Glass and steel, minimalist design, the kind of corporate elegance that whispered power in every clean closet. A lean line. A receptionist with perfect posture and a tablet directed her down a hallway, heels clicking on marble floors. Elliot's office was exactly what she'd expected, and somehow more. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the skyline spread out like a promise or a threat. Furniture that looked deceptively simple but probably cost more than most people's cars. Everything pristine, organized, controlled. He stood at the windows, phone to his ear, and gestured for her to enter without turning around. I don't care what the projections say, Mitchell. If the leadership team can't articulate a clear vision, we're not investing. No, I won't reconsider. We're done. He ended the call, pocketed the phone, and finally turned to face her. Today's suit was charcoal gray, impeccably tailored, no coffee stains. His expression was unreadable, those gray-blue eyes assessing her with the same intensity she remembered from the coffee shop. Ms. Whitmore, you came. You doubted I would? I thought there was a 30% chance you'd decide I was either dangerous or insane and block my number. A slight smile. Thank you for giving me the benefit of the doubt. He gestured to the seating area by the windows, 2 leather chairs and a low table. She sat, grateful her legs had carried her this far without betraying how nervous she was. Elliot took the opposite chair, and there was something almost jarring about seeing him in this setting. In the coffee shop, he'd been approachable, amused, human. Here, in his domain, he was something else entirely, commanding, untouchable. The kind of powerful that made you understand why people built empires and others worshipped at their feet. Before we begin, he said, I need to be honest with you. I researched you, too. Her stomach dropped. Of course he had. I know about your sister, Vanessa Whitmore. She approached me for investment 3 weeks ago. The world tilted slightly. What? Sterling Companies. She pitched me on expanding their digital division. Impressive presentation. Polished, strategic. He leaned back, finger steepled. And completely soulless. Every word calculated for effect, nothing authentic underneath. I turned her down. Nora couldn't find words. Vanessa had been here, in this office, sitting where she sat now. I also know, he continued, his voice gentler now, about the house, the job, the fiancé. I'm sorry. Why? The question came out sharper than intended. Why look into me? Why any of this? Because I recognized something in you at that coffee shop. Hunger. Not the entitled kind, the desperate kind. The kind that makes people either give up or rebuild from nothing. He met her eyes. I had a business partner once, college friend. He betrayed me, stole clients, nearly destroyed my first company. I was 23 and learned a very expensive lesson about trust. There was something raw in his admission, a crack in the polished surface. So you understand, Nora said quietly. I understand. He reached for a folder on the table, slid it toward her. Which brings us to why you're here. She opened it. Contract. Dense legal language. But certain phrases jumped out. 3 months, public appearances, professional conduct, compensation. I need a girlfriend, Elliot said, and his tone was matter-of-fact, discussing it like a business merger. Not a real one, a convincing one. Someone to attend events, deflect more mother's matchmaking attempts, and make me appear less isolated to business associates who think my single status indicates poor judgment or inability to form partnerships. Nora looked up from the contract. You want to hire me to pretend to date you? Yes. That's insane. That's practical. He leaned forward slightly. You need money and a fresh start. I need someone intelligent enough to handle high-pressure social situations and authentic enough that people will believe it. Someone who won't expect it to become real because we'll both know exactly what it is, a transaction. She should have walked out, should have told him this was degrading and manipulative and everything she'd promised herself she'd never accept. Instead, she looked at the compensation line. $150,000 for 3 months. Her throat tightened. That was enough to start over, enough to breathe. And what happens after 3 months, she managed. We stage a quiet breakup, mutual, amicable, no drama. You walk away with the money and something else. He pulled out a second document. I acquired a struggling marketing firm last year, Grayson Marketing Group. Talented team, no vision, no leadership that understands authentic storytelling. I'm offering you the position of creative director. Salary $180,000 annually, equity options, start date flexible. The room spun. You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a career. The relationship arrangement gets you capital. The job gets you a platform to prove what you can do without anyone claiming you didn't earn it. Except I would be earning it through this arrangement. You'd be earning it by being good at what you do. The arrangement just gets you in the door. His expression was steady, unflinching. I don't make bad investments, Nora. I've seen your work. The Morley campaign, the community outreach project for the literacy nonprofit. Those were yours, even though Vanessa's name is on them. You're the real thing. She's just better at taking credit. Hearing him say it, state it so plainly, cracked something in her chest. Why would you do this? She whispered. Really? He was quiet for a moment, and she watched him decide how honest to be. Because everyone wants something from me, he met finally. Money, connections, access, status. They pretend it's about me, but it's always about what I can give them. I thought someone who needed the arrangement as much as I do would at least be honest about the transaction. No false promises, no expectations beyond what's in the contract. There was loneliness in that admission, carefully controlled but unmistakable. And your mother, Nora asked, you mentioned her matchmaking. His jaw tightened slightly, the only sign of discomfort. She's ill, early-stage breast cancer, very treatable, but it's made her focused on seeing me settled. She wants grandchildren, legacy, all the things I can't give her while building an empire. This would buy me time, let her think I'm trying. So we'd be lying to a sick woman. We'd be giving her peace of mind while she focuses on treatment. He rubbed the back of his neck, and she filed away the gesture as a tell, a sign of stress. I know how it sounds, but I can't be what she wants, not right now, maybe not ever. This is the compromise. Nora looked at the contract again, the money, the job, the chance to prove Vanessa hadn't won. If I agree, she said slowly, what would you expect? Physically, I mean. Nothing you're not comfortable with. Hand-holding, arms around each other for photographs, maybe a kiss on the cheek if the situation demands it. We maintain boundaries in private, separate spaces. This is a performance, not a relationship. And if people don't believe it, then we make them believe it, he smiled slightly. You walked into me and convinced my associate you were a scheduled meeting. You improvised a business pitch. You have the skills for this, Nora. The question is whether you're desperate enough to use them. She hated that he was right, hated that desperation had brought her here, hated that she was actually considering this. But she was so tired of losing. I have one condition, she said. Name it. If this job offer is real, if I'm actually good enough, then it can't be contingent on the relationship arrangement. If I fail as creative director, fire me. But don't fire me because we're no longer pretending to date. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. Agreed. The job is separate. You earn it or lose it on your own merit. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Nora looked at his hand, at the contract, at the city spreading out behind him through those massive windows. She thought about Vanessa, about Trevor, about every time she'd been told she wasn't enough. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, steady. We have a deal. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something flickered across his face. That's my mother. There's a gallery opening tonight, art investment opportunity. She wants to know if I'm bringing anyone. He looked at Nora, eyebrows raised in question. Tonight? Her voice cracked slightly. That's very fast. The contract starts when you sign it, unless you need time to prepare. She thought about her apartment, her lack of appropriate clothing, the fact that she had maybe 6 hours to transform into someone who belonged on a billionaire's arm. I'll be ready, she said, and prayed it was true. The dress arrived at Jenna's apartment 3 hours before Elliot was scheduled to pick her up. Delivered by a professional courier, garment bag embossed with a designer label Nora recognized from magazine advertisements she'd never imagined would be relevant to her life. Inside was emerald green silk, elegant and understated, with a neckline that suggested sophistication rather than desperation. Shoes that actually fit, strappy heels in black. Jewelry that looked real because it probably was. A delicate gold bracelet and matching earrings. A note in precise handwriting. The color will suit you. Wear your hair down. E.g. Jenna stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression caught between concern and fascination. So, let me understand this correctly. You're fake dating a billionaire for money. When you say it like that, it sounds worse than it is. But Nora, it sounds exactly like what it is. But Jenna's tone softened. Are you sure about this? You don't know him. He could be dangerous. He's not dangerous. He's lonely. Nora held up the dress, watching light catch in the silk. And so am I. This is just mutually beneficial loneliness. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Probably. Nora turned to her friend, vulnerability creeping through the bravado. But it's a way out, Jen. A real one, Jen. The job is legitimate. I looked up Grayson Marketing Group. They do good work. This could be my chance to actually build something. Jenna studied her for a long moment, then sighed. Okay, but if he's weird, if anything feels wrong, you call me immediately. I don't care if you're at some fancy gala. I will come get you. Deal. 2 hours later, Nora barely recognized herself in Jenna's full-length mirror. The dress fit perfectly, skimming curves she'd forgotten she had under layers of exhaustion and baggy clothes. Her hair fell in loose waves past her shoulders, honey blonde catching gold in the light. Minimal makeup, just enough to look polished rather than painted. She looked like she belonged somewhere expensive, like someone worth arriving with. The illusion was dizzying. The car arrived at exactly 7 o'clock. Not a rideshare, an actual town car with a driver in a suit who opened the door and greeted her by name. Inside, Elliot waited, and when he saw her, he went completely still. He stopped, something unreadable crossing his face. Ready. Not beautiful, not stunning, ready, as if this were a mission, not a date. Which it was, Nora reminded herself. This was a performance, a transaction. She needed to remember that. You clean up well yourself. Yourself? She managed, settling into the leather seat beside him. And it was true. Dark navy suit tonight, crisp white shirt, no tie. Slightly less formal, which somehow made him more devastating. His hair looked like he'd run his fingers through it, and she wondered if that was calculated too, the appearance of effortlessness that probably took significant effort. The drive to the gallery was tense with unspoken things. He briefed her on the event, names she should remember, background on the artist, the fact that several major collectors would be present, and this was as much about networking as appreciation. When people ask how we met, he said, we tell them the truth. You spilled coffee on me at Morrison's. I was charmed by your honesty and horrified apology. We've been seeing each other for about 2 months. 2 months? So this is relatively new, but past the casual stage. Exactly. New enough that we're still discovering each other, established enough that I'd bring you to something like this. He glanced at her, something almost vulnerable in the look. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately. If you need to leave, we leave, no questions. You're very concerned about my comfort for someone who's essentially hired me for the evening. You're not an escort, Nora. You're a person doing me a favor in exchange for compensation. There's a difference. She wasn't entirely sure there was, but his sincerity seemed genuine, so she nodded. The gallery was everything she'd expected. Soaring ceilings, white walls, abstract pieces that probably cost more than houses. People in expensive clothes holding champagne flutes, speaking in the hushed tones of those performing culture rather than experiencing it. Elliot's hand found the small of her back as they entered, warm and grounding through the silk of her dress. The touch was possessive without being aggressive, the kind of casual intimacy that signaled to everyone watching that she was with him, that she belonged. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her expression calm, interested, the mask she'd perfected over years of pretending everything was fine. Elliot Grayson, an older man, approached, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. Didn't expect to see you at one of these. Thought you'd declared art investment too unpredictable. I'm expanding my definition of unpredictable, Charles. Elliot's smile was easy, professional. Charles Brennan, this is Nora Whitmore, my girlfriend. The word sent a small shock through her system. Girlfriend. First time hearing it applied to her in this context, and it sounded surreal, like dialogue from someone else's life. Pleasure, Charles said, assessing her with the quick, thorough glance of someone used to evaluating value. Whitmore. Any relation to Vanessa Whitmore at Sterling Communications? The question landed like a blade between her ribs, sharp and precise. My sister, Nora said, and was proud her voice remained steady. Ah, talented woman, you must be very proud. Elliot's hand pressed slightly more firmly against her back, a silent message of support. Nora's the real talent. She's joining Grayson Marketing Group as creative director. The campaigns she's built focus on authentic connection rather than manipulation. It's a refreshing approach in an industry that's forgotten consumers are human beings. Charles's eyebrows rose, high praise from someone who doesn't give it often. He turned to Nora with new interest. What's your philosophy on brand storytelling? And just like that, she was in her element, talking about narrative, about the difference between selling to people and speaking with them, about how the best marketing didn't feel like marketing at all. Charles asked probing questions. She answered with passion she'd been suppressing for months, the part of herself that actually loved this work when it wasn't tainted by office politics and credit theft. Elliot watched her, and when she glanced at him, there was something in his expression that looked almost like pride. They circulated through the gallery, a careful dance of introductions and small talk. His hand never left her back, and she found herself leaning into the touch without meaning to, drawing comfort from the solid warmth of him beside her.
When a photographer asked for a picture, Elliot pulled her closer, his arm around her waist. She fit against him easily, her hand resting on his chest, and for the camera, she smiled. The flash went off. The moment lingered a beat too long after, both of them frozen in the embrace, something electric in the air between them. "Beautiful couple," the photographer murmured, moving on to the next group. They separated slowly, carefully, like pulling apart magnets. "You're good at this," Elliot said quietly as they moved toward a sculpture in the corner, away from the crowd. "At lying? At being present, authentic, even when the situation isn't." His eyes found hers. "That answer you gave Charles about your work, that was real. It's easier to be real about work than about this." "This?" She gestured between them. "Whatever this is, performance art of a different kind." His expression shifted, something almost regretful passing through it. "For what it's worth, I meant what I said about your talent. That wasn't part of the act." Before she could respond, a woman's voice cut through the ambient noise. "Elliot Grayson, as I live and breathe." They turned. The woman approaching was striking, late 50s maybe, perfectly maintained in the way of people who could afford the best surgeons and stylists. Diamonds at her throat, predatory intelligence in her eyes. "Victoria," Elliot said, and Nora heard the tension in his voice. "I didn't realize you'd be here. I wouldn't."
Don't miss Marcus Chen's exhibition. I'm one of his primary patrons. Victoria's gaze slid to Nora, assessing and finding her wanting in the span of a heartbeat. "And who is this?" "Nora Whitmore, my girlfriend." The word came easier this time, more natural. "Whitmore." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Any relation to Vanessa Whitmore? I'm an investor in Sterling Communications. Brilliant woman, rising star." Nora's stomach dropped. Of course this would happen. "My sister," she said, forcing her voice to remain level. "How wonderful. You must be so proud. She's mentioned a sister, actually. Said you'd taken different paths." The pause was delicate, poisonous. "She's accomplished so much. Senior director now, isn't she? We're very impressed with her vision." The subtext was clear. "And what have you accomplished?" "Different paths, yes," Nora managed. "Vanessa prefers the corporate ladder. I prefer work that matters." "How noble." Victoria's tone suggested it was anything but. "And what is it you do, exactly?" "Nora's joining my marketing firm as creative director," Elliot interjected smoothly. "She built the campaigns that made Vanessa's reputation, actually. The Morelli campaign, the literacy nonprofit outreach, all Nora's work." Victoria's expression flickered with something that might have been surprise or doubt. "Is that so?" "It is." Elliot's voice had gone cold, the warmth from earlier completely absent. Nora chose integrity over credit. It's a rare quality, one I value highly. The air between them crackled with tension. Nora felt suddenly exposed, like she was watching something personal play out in a very public space. "Well," Victoria said after a loaded pause, "how fortunate you found each other. Elliot, we should discuss that portfolio expansion. Call my office." She drifted away, leaving awkward silence in her wake. "I'm sorry," Elliot said quietly. "She's always been a predator," Nora supplied. "It's fine. I'm used to people comparing me to Vanessa." "You shouldn't be." His hand found hers, squeezed briefly. "And for the record, you're nothing like her. That's a compliment." They left soon after, the gallery feeling suddenly claustrophobic. In the car, the silence was different than the drive there. Heavier, more complicated. "That went well," Nora said finally. "Aside from Victoria's subtle evisceration. You handled it perfectly, better than I expected." He was looking out the window, profile silhouetted against passing streetlights. "Thank you. For tonight." "You're paying me. Thanks aren't necessary." He turned to face her then, and in the dim interior of the car, his eyes were unreadable. "Maybe not, but I'm giving them anyway." The car pulled up to Jenna's building. The driver opened Nora's door, but before she could exit, Elliot spoke again. "Same time tomorrow, my penthouse. We need to prepare for the real test." "Real test?" His expression was grim.
My mother wants to meet you. This weekend, at the family estate in the Hamptons. Nora's heart stopped. That wasn't part of the contract. I know, which is why I'm offering $50,000 extra for the intrusion, and a promise that after this, the job starts regardless of whether we continue the arrangement. He met her eyes. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. She should have said no, should have set boundaries. Instead, she heard herself ask, "What's she like, your mother?" Perceptive, loving, terrifying. A small smile. She'll see through us in seconds if we're not careful. Then we'll be careful. His smile widened slightly. We will. Good night, Nora. Good night, Elliot. She walked into the building with 200,000 reasons to continue this lie, and one terrifying truth. For a few moments tonight, it hadn't felt like lying at all. 2 days before the Hamptons, Nora found herself standing in Elliot's penthouse at 8 in the evening, ostensibly for a briefing on family dynamics and cover story refinement. In reality, she was trying not to stare at the fact that a 34-year-old billionaire owned an apartment that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline like a painting that changed with every passing moment. The space was modern, clean lines and neutral tones, but surprisingly lived in. Books stacked on a side table, their spines creased from actual reading. A vintage record player in the corner, vinyl collection visible in the cabinet below. A chess set on the coffee table, game half finished, as if he played against himself in quiet moments. It made him human in a way the office hadn't. Wine? Elliot emerged from the kitchen, having shed his suit somewhere between the door and now. White shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and Nora had to actively redirect her attention to something that wasn't the lean muscle of his forearms. Sure, thank you. He poured 2 glasses of red, something that probably cost more than her monthly rent used to, and gestured to the leather couch. They sat at opposite ends, professional distance maintained, and he pulled out a tablet with notes. My mother is Eleanor Grayson, 62, former philanthropist, sharp as a blade. He scrolled through what looked like a dossier. She'll ask about your family, your background, your intentions. She's protective, and she will absolutely test whether this is real. What do I need to know about your father? Something shuddered in his expression. He died when I was 19. Heart attack, completely unexpected. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. He took a long drink of wine. My mother hasn't been the same since. Neither have I, if I'm honest. The vulnerability in the admission made Nora's chest tight. I'm sorry. That must have been devastating. It was. It also taught me that the people you love can disappear without warning. So I stopped letting people get close enough to devastate me. He set down the glass, met her eyes. Present company excluded, apparently. I'm not close. I'm contractually obligated. Right, but he didn't look convinced. Your turn. What do I need to know about your family that won't be in a background check? Nora curled her legs beneath her, the wine warming her from the inside. My parents divorced when I was 12. Dad moved to Singapore for work, remarried, has a whole new family now. We exchange birthday cards. Mom remarried too, to Vanessa's father. He was wealthy, demanding, and made it very clear I was the unwanted addition to his perfect family. That explains some things. Does it? She laughed without humor. Vanessa was his biological daughter. Beautiful, ambitious, everything he valued. I was the reminder that his wife had a whole life before him. He died when I was 22. Massive stroke. I felt guilty for being relieved. Elliot was quiet for a moment, studying her. Is that why you let her take credit for your work? Because you were used to being invisible? The question struck too close to something raw. I didn't let her. She just took. And I didn't know how to fight back without seeming petty or jealous. So I kept my head down and told myself the work mattered more than the credit. It doesn't, though. Not in this world. He leaned forward slightly. The work is only as valuable as the recognition it brings. That's the game, and Vanessa knows how to play it. I'm learning. Nora took another sip of wine. What about your mother's illness? What do I need to know? His jaw tightened, the only outward sign of discomfort. Stage 1 breast cancer. Caught early, excellent prognosis with treatment. She starts chemotherapy next month, but right now she's functional, just scared, and determined to see me settled before anything happens to her. So we're lying to a woman who might be dying? We're giving her peace of mind while she fights. He rubbed the back of his neck, that tell again. I know how it sounds, but I can't be what she wants. I can't promise her grandchildren and Sunday dinners and the fantasy of a normal life. I'm not built for that. This arrangement lets her believe I'm trying without me having to actually risk anything real. There was something profoundly sad in that logic, and Nora found herself wanting to argue with it, to tell him that maybe he was capable of more than he believed. But that wasn't her place. This was a transaction, not a therapy session. Okay, she said instead. So we convince her we're falling in love. How do we do that? He pulled up notes on the tablet. Shared memories, inside jokes, the kind of details that make a relationship feel lived in. He glanced at her. When did we have our first real date? 3 weeks after the coffee shop incident. You took me to dinner at that small Italian place in the West Village, the one with the terrible lighting and incredible pasta. Why terrible lighting? Because you said you wanted to actually talk to me without the performance of being seen. You wanted privacy. Something shifted in his expression. That's good, specific, true to character. He made a note. What do we argue about? You work too much. I tell you money isn't everything. You tell me it's easy to say that when you've never had to build something from nothing. And how do we resolve it? Nora thought about it, surprised by how easily the narrative came. You show up at my apartment at midnight with takeout from my favorite place and admit I'm right, but you don't know how to stop. Do I stay the night? The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither acknowledged. No, Nora said quietly. You leave, because we're taking it slow. Because I'm scared of getting hurt again, and you're scared of hurting me. Elliot was very still, watching her with an intensity that made her skin feel too tight. That's painfully accurate for a fake relationship. The best lies are mostly truth. They spent another hour building the scaffolding of their fictional romance, filling in gaps with details that felt authentic because they were rooted in who they actually were. By the time Nora checked her phone, it was nearly 11. I should go. Early morning tomorrow. Stay. He said it quickly, then seemed to catch himself. I mean, it's late. The guest room is available. Save yourself the commute. She should have said no. Should have maintained the distance that kept this professional. But the wine had softened her edges, and the conversation had been unexpectedly honest, and she was tired of sleeping on Jenna's couch. Okay, thank you. He showed her to a bedroom that was somehow both luxurious and impersonal, like a high-end hotel. Private bathroom, plush bedding, everything she could need. There's clothes in the dresser. My assistant keeps basics on hand for overnight guests. Help yourself. You have a lot of overnight guests? She said it lightly, teasingly, but his expression darkened. No, actually, you're the first person who's stayed here in over a year. He shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. Sleep well, Nora. He left before she could respond, and she stood in the guest room wondering what exactly she'd gotten herself into. The next morning, she woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Elliot was in the kitchen, making breakfast with the casual competence of someone who lived alone and had learned to take care of himself. He'd traded the business attire for jeans and a faded Columbia University t-shirt, and the informality was somehow more intimate than the suits. Morning,
He said, not looking up from the eggs he was scrambling. Coffee's fresh. Mugs are in the cabinet to your left. Nora poured herself a cup, acutely aware she was wearing borrowed clothes, an oversized t-shirt and yoga pants that were slightly too long. Her hair was a mess, she had no makeup. This was the most unguarded he'd seen her. You didn't have to make breakfast. I was making it anyway. You want some? They ate at the kitchen island, a surprisingly domestic scene that neither commented on. The conversation drifted from work to movies to the fact that Elliot apparently had strong opinions about proper pizza construction. Chicago deep dish is not pizza, he insisted. It's a casserole pretending to be pizza. That's culinary gatekeeping. It's fact-based analysis. She laughed, real and unguarded, and watched something in his expression soften. Her phone buzzed. Jenna, still alive? Do I need to call the police? Nora typed back,
alive, stayed in guest room, very boring, very appropriate. Jenna's response was immediate. That's somehow more concerning than if you'd slept with him. Maybe it was. The shopping trip happened that afternoon. Elliot's assistant had made an appointment at a boutique that clearly didn't display price tags because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Nora felt immediately out of place among the silk and cashmere, but Elliot seemed determined to make this as painless as possible. "We need weekend casual for the estate," he told the personal shopper. "Elegant but comfortable, nothing too formal." The woman, sleek and efficient, began pulling options. Nora found herself in a dressing room with an array of clothes that all looked effortlessly expensive. She tried on a sundress first, soft yellow linen that moved like water. When she emerged, Elliot looked up from his phone and went completely still. "That one," he said, voice slightly rough. "Definitely, that one." "It's $800 for a sundress? I don't care about the price. You look like summer." The compliment landed somewhere dangerous, in the space where the line between performance and reality was starting to blur. They left with bags of clothes Nora would never have bought for herself, and on the drive back to drop her at Jenna's, Elliot was quiet. "Thank you," Nora said finally, "for all of this. The clothes, the preparation, the job. I know I keep saying it, but I mean it. You don't need to thank me. This is mutually beneficial, remember?" But his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as her. That night, unable to sleep, Nora got a text. "Are you awake?" She responded, "Unfortunately. You?" "Can't turn my brain off. Keeps running through everything that could go wrong this weekend." "Like what?" "Like my mother seeing through us. Like you realizing this was a terrible idea. Like me forgetting this is supposed to be fake." She stared at the message for a long time before typing, "Would that be so terrible, forgetting it's fake?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Yes, because when this ends, I need to be able to walk away clean, and I don't think I could if it became real." Her heart sank. "Then we won't let it become real." "Promise?" She looked at the word, knowing she was lying. "Promise." The drive to the Hamptons began at 9 a.m. 2 hours in a car with Elliot, heading into the most dangerous performance yet. As Nora settled into the passenger seat, watching the city give way to highway, she realized she'd stopped thinking about the money weeks ago. She was doing this for him now, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. The Grayson estate wasn't a house. It was a statement rendered in white stone and colonial architecture, sprawling across manicured grounds that spoke of generations of wealth. Nora felt her stomach drop as Elliot's car crunched up the gravel driveway, past gardens that probably required a full-time staff, and toward a structure that made her childhood home look like a garden shed. The 2-hour drive had been tense. They'd gone over the story again, reinforcing details, but the closer they got, the quieter Elliot became. Now, pulling to a stop in front of the main entrance, his hands were tight on the steering wheel. "Breathe," Nora said softly, echoing his words from the coffee shop a lifetime ago. He turned to her, and there was genuine fear in those gray-blue eyes. She's going to know. My mother always knows. "Then we don't lie. We just don't tell the whole truth." Nora reached over, squeezed his hand. "You survived building a billion-dollar company. You can survive a weekend with your mother." The company was easier. But he squeezed back, and some of the tension left his shoulders. The front door opened before they could knock. Eleanor Grayson stood framed in the doorway, and Nora understood immediately why Elliot was nervous. The woman was elegant, in the effortless way of old money, linen pants and a silk blouse, salt and pepper hair cut in a sleek bob. But it was her eyes that arrested attention, the same gray-blue as her son, sharp and assessing and missing nothing. "Elliot." Eleanor's voice was warm, genuinely delighted, as she pulled him into an embrace. "You're late. I was beginning to worry you'd changed your mind." "Traffic." He kissed her cheek, and Nora saw the love there, uncomplicated and deep. "Mom, this is Nora Whitmore." Eleanor turned, and Nora felt the full weight of that intelligent gaze. Being assessed, being measured, being evaluated for worthiness. Eleanor stepped forward, and instead of offering her hand, pulled Nora into a hug. "We don't shake hands in this family, dear. Welcome." The embrace was brief, but
genuine, smelling of expensive perfume and something floral. When Eleanor pulled back, her smile seemed authentic, but there was calculation behind it. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Grayson. Your home is beautiful. Please call me Eleanor, and it's just a house." But the way she said it suggested she knew exactly how impressive it was. "Come, let me show you to your room. You must be exhausted from the drive." The interior was exactly what Nora expected. High ceilings, crown molding, furniture that was probably older than she was. Family photographs lined the hallway, and Nora caught glimpses of Elliot at various ages, always serious, even as a child. Eleanor led them upstairs, down a corridor with plush carpeting that absorbed sound. She stopped at a door, opened it to reveal a guest room that was larger than Jenna's entire apartment. 4-poster bed, antique furniture, windows overlooking the gardens. "I hope this suits you, Nora. Private bathroom through that door." Eleanor's smile was pleasant, but her next words carried weight. "Elliot, your room is in the East Wing. I'm old-fashioned about unmarried couples under my roof. I'm sure you understand." Elliot's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Of course." "Wonderful. Freshen up, both of you. Lunch is in 30 minutes on the terrace." Eleanor paused at the door, looking between them with that sharp gaze. "I'm so glad you're here. It's been too long since this house had young love in it." After she left, Elliot lingered in the doorway of Nora's realm, frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. "She's testing us," he said quietly. "Separate wings, seeing if we'll sneak around." "Then we won't." Nora set down her bag, turned to face him. "We play by her rules. Show her we respect her boundaries." "She's going to interrogate you at lunch." "I know." Nora moved closer, lowered her voice. "Elliot, you're terrified of disappointing her. Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, staring at a point past her shoulder. "Because she's all I have, and I've spent 15 years building an empire instead of the life she wanted for me. This lie is just one more way I'm failing her." The rawness of it made Nora's chest ache. "You're not failing her. You're protecting her. There's a difference." "Is there?" He met her eyes, and she saw the doubt there, the fear that maybe he'd become someone his father wouldn't recognize. "I'll let you settle in. See you at lunch." He left, and Nora stood in the expensive guest room, wondering how someone with everything could feel like he had nothing at all. Lunch on the terrace was an exercise in elegant warfare. The setting was gorgeous, wrought iron table under a pergola draped in wisteria, the ocean visible in the distance. The food was impeccable, light and fresh, and probably prepared by a private chef, and Eleanor's questions were surgical in their precision. "So, Nora, Elliot mentioned you worked in marketing. How lovely. What firm are you with?" The trap was subtle. Nora didn't currently have a firm, and Eleanor likely knew it. "I'm joining Grayson Marketing Group as creative director," Nora said carefully. "How convenient. And before that?" "I was at Sterling Communications, marketing coordinator." Eleanor's eyebrows rose delicately. "Was? Past tense?" "I left 4 months ago. It was time for a change." How brave, leaving a stable position without something lined up. The words were supportive, but the subtext was clear. Or foolish. Elliot set down his fork with slightly more force than necessary. Nora left because the environment was toxic. Her supervisor was taking credit for her work. When she pushed back, she was forced out. Eleanor's gaze sharpened. "That's terrible. What was the supervisor's name?" "Vanessa Whitmore," Nora said quietly. The silence that followed was heavy. Eleanor studied Nora with new intensity, and something shifted in her expression. Not pity exactly, recognition maybe. "Family can be complicated," Eleanor said finally, and there was surprising gentleness in her tone. "My own sister and I didn't speak for 10 years over an inheritance dispute. She wanted our mother's house, I wanted peace. Neither of us got what we wanted until we finally talked." She paused.
Are you and your sister close? No. Nora's throat was tight. Elliot reached across the table, took her hand. The gesture was protective, possessive, and entirely genuine. Vanessa is brilliant at self-promotion and terrible at actual creativity. Nora is the opposite. I've seen her work. The campaigns that made Vanessa's reputation were all Nora's. She just didn't fight for credit. Why not? Eleanor asked, and the question wasn't accusatory. It was curious. Nora thought about lying, about giving some polished answer, but Eleanor's eyes were too knowing, and she was tired of performing. Because fighting would have meant admitting I cared, and caring about things my sister wanted always ended badly. She met Eleanor's gaze. So I learned to care about the work instead of the recognition. Turns out that was a mistake in an industry that values visibility over substance. Eleanor was quiet for a moment, then smiled. It was the first fully genuine expression she'd given Nora. You have fire. I appreciate that. My son needs someone who won't let him bulldoze them with logic and money. Mom, Elliot said, but there was affection in the aspiration. What? It's true. You're brilliant, darling, but you have a tendency to treat relationships like mergers. Eleanor turned back to Nora. Tell me, what do you think of Elliot's work habits? And just like that, they were back to testing. I think he's afraid to stop moving because then he'd have to think about what he's running
From, Nora said, surprising herself with the honesty. But I also think his work matters to him in a way that's genuine. He doesn't build companies just to make money. He builds them to prove something. I'm just not sure who he's proving it to. Elliot stared at her, something vulnerable and exposed in his expression. Eleanor's smile widened. Oh, I like her. Elliot, you didn't mention she was perceptive. I'm discovering new things constantly, he said dryly, but his hand was still holding Nora's, thumb moving absently across her knuckles. The rest of lunch passed more easily. Eleanor asked about Nora's vision for the marketing firm, and Nora found herself talking with genuine passion about authentic storytelling, about brands that connected with real human experiences rather than manufactured desires. Eleanor listened with clear interest, asking intelligent questions, and by the time dessert arrived, Nora had almost forgotten this was a performance. Almost. As they finished, Eleanor stood. I have a dress for you to wear tonight, Nora. Dinner party. 4 couples, old family friends, nothing too intimidating. Her smile suggested it would be very intimidating. Come with me. Elliot, give us a moment. Nora followed Eleanor inside, up to the master suite. The dress was laid out on the bed, midnight blue silk that looked vintage and incredibly expensive. This was mine when I was your age, Eleanor said, running her hand over the fabric. I wore it the night Elliot's father proposed. It would suit you beautifully. The gesture was significant, loaded with meaning Nora couldn't quite parse. Eleanor, I can't possibly. You can. You will. Eleanor turned, and her expression was serious now, the warmth stripped away. Now, dear, tell me the truth about you and my son. Nora's heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean that I've watched Elliot navigate business negotiations and social obligations for 15 years. I know when he's performing and when he's genuine. Eleanor's gaze was piercing. And at lunch, when he defended you, when he looked at you like you were the only person in the room, that wasn't performance. So tell me, what is this really? Every instinct screamed to maintain the lie, but Eleanor was offering something rare, a chance at honesty, and Nora found she couldn't reject it. It started as an arrangement, she said carefully. He needed a girlfriend for appearances. I needed a way out of a very dark place. We agreed to help each other. And now? Now it's complicated. Nora's voice was barely above a whisper. Because the lines have blurred, and I don't know what's real anymore. Eleanor studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Good, that's honest. And for what it's worth, I think you care about him. That's not fake. No, Nora admitted. That's not fake. Then let me be clear about something. Eleanor's voice hardened. If you're using him, I'll know, and I will end it. But if he's using you, if he's treating you like another transaction, I'll stop that too. Are we clear? Yes.
Eleanor's expression softened. Good. Now wear the dress. Show those stuffy old friends of mine that my son has excellent taste. She paused at the door. And Nora, whatever this is between you two, make him fight for it. He needs to learn that the things worth having don't come with contracts. After Eleanor left, Nora sat on the bed, holding the midnight blue silk, and wondered if she was strong enough to follow that advice. The dinner party began at 7, and by 6:45, Nora was standing in front of the guest room mirror, barely recognizing herself. Eleanor's dress fit perfectly, the midnight blue silk clinging in ways that suggested elegance rather than desperation. Her hair was swept up, a few loose strands framing her face, and the vintage garnet earrings Eleanor had insisted she borrowed caught the light like small flames. She looked like she belonged in this world, like someone worth keeping. The illusion was dangerous. A soft knock at the door made her turn. Elliot stood in the doorway, dressed in a dark suit that made him look both powerful and vulnerable. And when he saw her, he went completely still. "You look..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "That dress. My mother wore it the night my father proposed." "She told me." Nora's voice was soft. "Is it okay? I can change if..." "No, don't change. You're perfect." He stepped into the room, and there was something raw in his expression. "My mother is giving you her blessing. That dress, it's her way of saying she approves. She also interrogated me about whether we're real." "What did you tell her?" "The truth, that it started as an arrangement and became complicated." Nora met his eyes. "She said to make you fight for it, whatever it is." Elliot moved closer, and the air between them felt charged, electric. "And if I don't know how to fight for things that aren't mergers and acquisitions, then I guess we're both learning." His hand came up, almost touching her face, then dropped. "We should go down. The guests will be arriving." But neither of them moved, caught in the gravity of the moment, until voices from downstairs broke the spell. The dining room was intimidating in its formality. Crystal chandeliers, antique china, a table that could seat 20, but tonight held 11. The guests were exactly what Nora expected. Wealthy, polished, the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. 4 couples in their 60s, old family friends, who regarded Nora with thinly veiled curiosity. Elliot's hand found the small of her back as introductions were made, the touch grounding and possessive. She smiled, shook hands, made appropriate small talk about the weather and the drive from the city. Then Victoria.
Victoria Sterling arrived. Nora recognized her immediately from the gallery, that predatory intelligence sharpened by expensive wine and social advantage. Victoria's gaze swept over Nora, and something cold flickered in her eyes. "Nora Whitmore, what a surprise to see you here." Victoria's smile was all teeth. "I didn't realize you and Eleanor knew each other." "We're getting acquainted," Eleanor said smoothly, appearing at Nora's elbow. "Nora is Elliot's girlfriend. I'm quite taken with her." "How lovely." Victoria settled into her seat with the confidence of someone who'd sat at this table many times before. "Whitmore, I've been thinking about that name. Any relation to Vanessa Whitmore at Sterling Communications?" And there it was, the trap sprung in front of witnesses. "My half-sister," Nora said, keeping her voice level even as her stomach dropped. "Of course, Vanessa, brilliant woman, rising star in our organization." Victoria sipped her wine, eyes gleaming. "She's mentioned a sister, said you'd taken different paths in life. She's accomplished so much, senior director now. We're very impressed with her vision." The subtext was a knife between the ribs, and "you're here as someone's accessory." "Different paths, yes," Nora managed. "Vanessa excels at corporate politics. I prefer work with actual substance." "How noble." Victoria's tone suggested it was pathetic rather than admirable. "And what is it you do, exactly, when you're not accompanying Elliot to family gatherings?" Nora felt Elliot tense beside her, but before he could intervene, another guest, a silver-haired man named Richard, spoke up. "I looked you up after the gallery opening, my dear. The Morelli campaign, absolutely brilliant. My wife and I went to that bakery specifically because of that advertisement. Best cannoli in Brooklyn."
Thank you, Nora said, grateful for the lifeline. That project was special. The family story deserved to be told authentically. I was surprised to see Vanessa's name on the campaign credits, Richard continued, oblivious to the tension. You worked together on it? The question hung in the air, loaded and dangerous. Nora created that campaign, Elliot said, his voice cold and precise. Vanessa Whitmore took credit for it, just like she took credit for the literacy nonprofit outreach, the community arts initiative, and half a dozen other projects Nora built from the ground up. Shocked silence rippled through the table. Victoria's expression hardened. That's quite an accusation, Elliot. It's quite a fact, Victoria. He didn't look at her, his attention fixed on Nora with an intensity that made her breath catch. I've seen the original proposals, the strategy documents, all in Nora's handwriting with her approach to storytelling. Vanessa is talented at performance and self-promotion. Nora is talented at actual creativity and human connection. There's a difference. I had no idea, Eleanor said quietly, and there was steel in her voice now. Victoria, you're an investor in Sterling Communications? Primary investor, yes. Then you should know you're backing a woman who builds her reputation on stolen work and family betrayal. Eleanor's gaze was ice. Vanessa Whitmore stole Nora's fiancé, manipulated their dying mother into changing her will, and orchestrated Nora's termination from their shared firm. And somehow, Nora is still standing, still creating, still believing in integrity over shortcuts. The table was silent. Nora felt tears pricking her eyes, overwhelmed by the fierce protection from people who barely knew her. Victoria recovered first, her smile brittle. Well, this is certainly an unexpected turn. Perhaps we should discuss something less inflammatory. Richard, how is the yacht renovation coming? But the damage was done. The other guests looked at Nora with new interest, sympathy, respect even, and Victoria looked at her with barely concealed fury. The rest of dinner passed in a blur. Nora answered questions about her vision for Grayson marketing, her approach to authentic brand storytelling, her plans for the firm. The guests engaged genuinely, and by the time dessert was served, she'd been offered 3 potential client consultations. When the party finally moved to the sitting room for after-dinner drinks, Nora excused herself. She needed air, space, a moment to process the fact that Elliot had just burned professional bridges to defend her. She found herself in the garden, the night air cool against her flushed skin, the sound of the ocean a distant rhythm. Nora, she turned. Elliot stood at the garden entrance, backlit by the house lights, and even from this distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders. You shouldn't have done that, she said as he approached. Victoria Sterling invests millions in your ventures. You just made an enemy for me. I don't care. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the storm in his eyes. Why? The question came out raw, desperate. Why do you care so much? This is supposed to be an arrangement, a performance, and you just... Because it stopped being a performance for me. The words burst out of him, uncontrolled and honest. Weeks ago, maybe from the beginning, I don't know anymore. Nora's breath caught. Elliot, I tried to keep it professional. I tried to maintain boundaries, but then you'd say something insightful, or laugh at my terrible jokes, or look at me like I'm more than just my bank account, and every defense I've built just crumbles. He stepped closer, and she could see the vulnerability etched in every line of his face. This weekend, watching you with my mother, watching you hold your own against people who were raised to make others feel small, I realized something. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I don't want this to be fake anymore. The world narrowed to just the two of them, the garden fading into irrelevance. What are you saying? Nora's voice trembled. I'm saying that I'm terrified and completely unqualified for this, but I think I'm falling in love with you. The confession hung between them, fragile and world-altering. Nora's heart hammered against her ribs. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was dangerous, that she barely knew him, that this had disaster written all over it. But her heart, traitorous and hopeful, whispered something else entirely. I think I'm falling in love with you too, she breathed, and it's the most terrifying thing I've ever admitted. Something broke in his expression, relief and joy and fear all tangled together. He reached up, cupped her face with both hands, thumbs brushing her cheekbones with devastating gentleness. "Can I kiss you?" His voice was rough. "Not for cameras or witnesses or my mother, just because I've been wanting to since you spilled coffee on me and apologized like it was the end of the world." Yes, he kissed her, and it was nothing like the careful, performative touches they'd exchanged before. This was real, desperate, honest. His hands in her hair, her fingers gripping his jacket, both of them pouring months of tension and denial and want into the contact. She tasted wine on his lips, felt the slight tremor in his hands, heard the small sound he made when she pulled him closer. The world spun, reforming around this new reality where they were no longer pretending. When they finally broke apart, foreheads pressed together, breathing ragged, Nora opened her eyes to find Eleanor standing on the terrace. Their eyes met across the garden. Eleanor's expression was unreadable, but she didn't look surprised. She looked sad. Then she turned and walked back inside. Reality crashed back. Elliot followed Nora's gaze, saw his mother's retreating figure, and the joy drained from his face. "She knows," he said hoarsely. "She knows it was fake, and now it's real, and—" "Elliot," Nora grabbed his arms, forcing him to look at her. "We'll explain. We'll tell her the truth. The truth that I lied to her while she's sick, that I hired someone to pretend to love me because I'm too broken to risk the real thing." His laugh was bitter, self-loathing. "That'll go over beautifully. Then we tell her it became real, that we didn't plan this. She won't forgive me." His voice cracked. "She's all I have, Nora, and I just destroyed the one thing that mattered to her." Before Nora could respond, Eleanor's voice called from the house. "Elliot, Nora, my study, now." They walked back like prisoners to execution, hands linked, both knowing that everything was about to change. Eleanor sat behind the desk in her study, the room dark except for a single lamp. Her expression was carved from ice. "Sit." They sat. "How long have you been lying to me?" Elliot opened his mouth, but Eleanor held up a hand. "The truth. All of it. Now." So they told her. The coffee shop collision, the arrangement, the contract, the money. Elliot's voice was steady, but his hand shook in Nora's. She filled in gaps, explained her desperation, her reasons, and finally, haltingly, they explained how it had become real. When they finished, Eleanor was silent for a long moment. "You've been using each other," she said finally, "and lying to me, while I'm fighting cancer, while I'm terrified of dying before seeing my son happy. Mom, please, I need to be alone." Eleanor's voice was hollow. "Nora, your room. Elliot, yours. Separate wings. And tomorrow, we'll discuss what happens next." They left in silence, and at the hallway junction where their paths diverged, Elliot pulled Nora close. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry I dragged you into this." "Don't," she said fiercely. "Don't apologize for the first real thing we've done." He kissed her forehead, gentle and devastating. "What happens now?" "I don't know, but we face it together." They separated to their rooms, and Nora lay awake in Eleanor's midnight blue dress, touching her lips where his kiss still burned, wondering if love was always this complicated, or if they'd just gotten spectacularly unlucky. 3 weeks later, Nora sat in her new apartment and tried to remember what happiness felt like. The space was small, but hers, one bedroom in a building that didn't smell like someone else's cooking. She'd used part of the initial $50,000 from Elliot to secure it, furnished it with basics from IKEA, and created something that resembled a life. The creative director position at Grayson Marketing Group was everything he'd promised. Challenging work, talented team, projects that actually mattered. On paper, she'd gotten everything she wanted. In reality, she was miserable. She hadn't seen Elliot since the Hamptons. He'd left early that Sunday morning, a terse text her only goodbye. Giving you space, the job is yours regardless. I'm sorry for everything. At work, his presence was everywhere and nowhere. His name on emails, his decisions shaping strategy, but never him in person. Her assistant mentioned he'd been working from home, taking meetings remotely, avoiding the office when Nora was there. They were orbiting each other like planets that had lost gravitational pull, drifting further apart with each passing day. Jenna sat cross-legged on the new couch, eating takeout and watching Nora with concerned eyes. You got everything you wanted and you're completely miserable. You know that's ironic, right? I'm aware. Nora pushed rice around her container without eating.
I should be grateful. New apartment, dream job, independence. Everything I fought for. Except the one thing you actually want. Nora set down the container. Which is him, Elliot, the emotionally constipated billionaire who looked at you like you hung the moon. Jenna's expression was gentle. Babe, you're in love with him. It doesn't matter. His mother isn't speaking to him because of me. I destroyed his only real relationship. You didn't destroy anything. He made choices. You both did. Jenna leaned forward. Have you tried calling him? No. He asked for space. I'm giving it to him. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Jenna grabbed Nora's phone, held it out. Call him. Text him. Show up at his office. Something. But Nora couldn't, because what if he'd realized it was a mistake? What if the weeks of silence meant he'd come to his senses and remembered she was just the girl who'd spilled coffee on him, desperate enough to accept a transactional arrangement? What if she'd imagined the way he'd looked at her in that garden? Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Nora Whitmore? The voice was male, smooth, achingly familiar in the worst way. Her stomach dropped. Trevor? Yeah, hi. I know this is weird, but I got your number from your old HR file. I'm still listed as emergency contact, and he paused. Could we meet? Just for coffee. I need to talk to you. Every instinct screamed to hang up, but exhaustion and loneliness made her weak, made her say, why? Because I made a mistake, the biggest mistake of my life, and I need you to know that. She should have said no, should have blocked the number and moved on. Instead, she heard herself say, one coffee. That's it. They met at Morrison's, the coffee shop where everything had started, and the irony wasn't lost on Nora. Trevor looked the same, conventionally handsome in that forgettable way, wearing a suit that suggested Vanessa's influence even after their breakup. You look good, he said, sliding into the chair across from her. Different, confident. What do you want, Trevor? He had the grace to look ashamed, to apologize. For Vanessa, for the house, for everything. I was weak and selfish, and I destroyed the best thing in my life. You cheated on me in my bed, in my house, with my sister? Nora's voice was flat. There's not really an apology that covers that. I know, but I need to try. He leaned forward, and she caught a whiff of his cologne, once familiar, now foreign. Her stomach dropped. Vanessa and I broke up 3 weeks ago. I couldn't do it anymore. She's manipulative, cold, everything you're not. Being with her made me realize what I'd lost. So you want me back because she was worse? That's not the compliment you think it is. No, I want you back because I was an idiot who threw away something real for something shiny and empty. His hand moved across the table, covered hers. We were good once, Nora. We could be again. I've changed. She looked at his hand on hers and felt nothing. No anger, no longing, not even satisfaction at his regret. Just emptiness. Trevor, just one dinner. Let me prove I'm different. That's all I'm asking. And because she was tired and hurt and so desperately lonely, because Elliot's silence felt like abandonment, she said, one dinner, Saturday, but that's all. He smiled, that same charming smile that had worked 3 years ago, and she wondered what she'd ever seen in him. What Nora didn't know was that someone at the coffee shop, a regular who'd seen her there dozens of times with Elliot, had taken a photo, candid, innocent, of Trevor holding her hand across the table. They posted it to Instagram with a caption,
New love at Morrison's? This girl trades up fast. The post tagged the location. Within hours, it had been screenshot and shared in the social circles that knew Nora as Elliot Grayson's girlfriend. Elliot saw it at 11 that night, alone in his penthouse, 3 glasses of whiskey deep and spiraling. He'd spent 3 weeks trying to give Nora space, trying to respect what he thought she wanted, working himself to exhaustion to avoid thinking about her. Now, he stared at the photo and felt something crack in his chest. He zoomed in on their joined hands, read the caption again, and rage flooded through him. Not at her, at himself. He'd pushed her away. He'd been a coward, and someone else had been there to catch her. His investigator had the man's identity within 30 minutes. Trevor Hamilton, real estate developer, Nora's ex-fiancé, the one who cheated with Vanessa, the one who destroyed her. Elliot stood, paced his apartment like a caged animal, every corporate instinct screaming at him to strategize, to calculate, to control. But this wasn't a merger. This was Nora, and he was out of his depth and absolutely terrified. His assistant's report came through at midnight. Trevor had reservations at Oriole for Saturday night, 7:30. Elliot made a reservation for the same restaurant, same time. He was done giving space, done being controlled, done pretending he could survive without her. Saturday arrived with painful inevitability. Jenna helped Nora dress, asking repeatedly why she was doing this. "Because maybe easy is what I need," Nora said, staring at her reflection. Simple black dress, understated makeup, armor against hope. Maybe love isn't supposed to hurt this much. "You don't love Trevor, you love Elliot." Jenna's frustration was palpable. This is self-sabotage. It's moving on. But her hands shook as Trevor picked her up, and her smile felt like glass when he complimented her appearance. Oriole was elegant, intimate, exactly the kind of place Trevor would choose to try to win her back. They were seated near the windows, candlelight flickering between them, and Trevor was trying so hard. Compliments, memories of good times, promises of change. Nora nodded, smiled, felt absolutely nothing. "I want to do this right this time," Trevor said, reaching across the table for her hand. "Will you give me a real chance? Not just dinner, but actually trying again?" She opened her mouth to answer, though she had no idea what she'd say. No, she won't. The voice was cold, controlled, and absolutely furious. Nora's head snapped up. Elliot stood beside their table, looking like barely contained chaos in jeans and a t-shirt she'd never seen him wear in public. His hair was disheveled, his eyes wild, and he was staring at her like she was water and he was dying of thirst. "Who the hell are you?" Trevor demanded, standing. "Elliot Grayson, the man who's in love with her." He didn't look at Trevor, his entire focus on Nora. "Don't do this. Don't settle for him, because I was a coward." "Elliot, what are you—" She stood, her chair scraping loudly. Other diners were turning, watching, phones appearing. "You ended it," Nora said, and her voice cracked. "You called it a performance. You pushed me away and then disappeared for 3 weeks." "I lied." The words came out raw, desperate. "I was protecting myself. I was terrified of losing you, so I pushed you away first. But I can't do it anymore. I can't breathe without you." Trevor grabbed Nora's arm. "Come on, you don't need this scene. Let's go." Elliot's hand shot out, gripping Trevor's wrist with controlled violence. "Touch her again, and you'll lose the hand." "Elliot," Nora said, trying to regain control of a situation spiraling wildly. "You can't just—" "I love you." He said it loudly, clearly, for her and everyone in the restaurant. "I'm in love with you. I have been since you walked into me and looked at me like I was a person instead of a bank account. And I know I have no right to be here, no right to ask for another chance, but I'm asking anyway." Tears streamed down her face. "You broke my heart. You made me feel like I was crazy, like everything between us was in my head. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He stepped closer, ignoring Trevor completely. "But it wasn't in your head. It was real. Every moment, every conversation, Every time I looked at you and forgot to breathe, all of it was real. Then why? The question came out as a sob. Why push me away? Because everyone I love leaves. My father, my business partner, and I thought if I controlled everything, kept you at a distance, I wouldn't get destroyed when you inevitably left too. His voice broke. But pushing you away destroyed me anyway. And watching you with him, knowing I did this, that I drove you into his arms. You didn't drive me anywhere, Nora said fiercely. I'm not property. I make my own choices. I know that. I'm not here to claim you. I'm here to fight for you, to prove I'm worth the risk. He was close now, close enough that she could see the fear in his eyes. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. Trevor interjected. Nora, let's just go. This guy is clearly unstable. Trevor, leave. Nora didn't look at him. This was a mistake. I don't love you. I never will again. Go. Trevor sputtered, looked between them, then grabbed his coat and stalked out. The restaurant buzzed with whispers, cameras capturing everything, but Nora couldn't bring herself to care. You can't do this, she told Elliot, and her voice was shaking. You can't ignore me for 3 weeks and then show up and declare love in a public restaurant and expect. I don't expect anything. I'm asking, begging, actually, which is new for me and terrifying, but here we are. He took a shaky breath. I love you. I'm completely unqualified for this. I will probably mess it up repeatedly, but I love you, and I'm asking for the chance to prove it. Tears streamed down her face. You broke my heart. You made me feel like I was crazy, like everything between us was in my head. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He stepped closer, ignoring Trevor completely. But it wasn't in your head. It was real. Every moment, every conversation, every time I looked at you and forgot to breathe, all of it was real. Then why? The question came out as a sob. Why push me away? Because everyone I love leaves. My father, my business partner, and I thought if I controlled everything, kept you at a distance, I wouldn't get destroyed when you inevitably left too. His voice broke. But pushing you away destroyed me anyway. And watching you with him, knowing I did this, that I drove you into his arms. You didn't drive me anywhere, Nora said fiercely. I'm not property. I make my own choices. I know that. I'm not here to claim you. I'm here to fight for you, to prove I'm worth the risk. He was close now, close enough that she could see the fear in his eyes. Tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this. Trevor interjected. Nora, let's just go. This guy is clearly unstable. Trevor, leave. Nora didn't look at him. This was a mistake. I don't love you. I never will again. Go. Trevor sputtered, looked between them, then grabbed his coat and stalked out. The restaurant buzzed with whispers, cameras capturing everything, but Nora couldn't bring herself to care. You can't do this, she told Elliot, and her voice was shaking. You can't ignore me for 3 weeks and then show up and declare love in a public restaurant and expect. I don't expect anything. I'm asking, begging, actually, which is new for me, but here we are. He took a shaky breath. I love you. I'm completely unqualified for this. I will probably mess it up repeatedly, but I love you, and I'm asking for the chance to prove it. She looked at him, really looked at him, saw the fear and hope and vulnerability he was offering like a gift. What about your mother? She whispered. I'll fix it. I'll make her understand. But I can't do any of it without you. His hand came up, almost touching her face, hovering like he was afraid she'd disappear. Please, give me another chance. Let me prove this is real. Every rational part of Nora's brain listed reasons to refuse, but her heart, stubborn and hopeful, wanted to believe. I need more than words, Elliot. I need proof. Then I'll give it to you, whatever it takes. She grabbed her purse. Then start now. Fix things with your mother, tonight. And then, maybe we can talk about us. She walked past him, out of the restaurant, leaving him standing there. But she was smiling through her tears, because he'd come, he'd fought, And that was a start. Elliot drove to the Hamptons at midnight, the kind of reckless decision he'd spent his entire adult life avoiding. But Nora had given him a chance, conditional and terrifying, and he wasn't going to waste it on calculation and fear. The estate was dark when he arrived, except for one light in his mother's study. He let himself in with his key, climbed the stairs, and knocked on the study door. "It's open." Eleanor sat behind her desk, reading glasses perched on her nose, papers spread before her. She looked up as he entered, and her expression was carefully neutral. "Elliot, it's 1 a.m. I know. I need to talk to you, and you're going to listen." She set down her pen, removed her glasses. "Am I?" "Yes." He moved into the room, staying standing because sitting felt like surrender. "You haven't spoken to me in 3 weeks. You won't answer my calls. You're shutting me out, and I understand why, but I can't accept it anymore. You lied to me while I'm fighting cancer."
I did. And I'm sorry, but you're using that as a weapon, and it's not fair. His voice was firm, not cruel. Your prognosis is excellent. Stage 1, caught early, treatment is working. You're not dying, Mom. You're scared, and that's valid. But you don't get to hold your illness over my head to avoid this conversation. Eleanor's eyes flashed. Excuse me? I lied because I was terrified of disappointing you, because I've spent 15 years building an empire instead of the life you wanted for me, and I thought if I could just fake it, just give you the illusion of happiness, it would be enough. He ran a hand through his hair. It was wrong. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. What truth? That you hired a woman to pretend to love you? That I'm lonely. The admission cracked something open in him. That I've been lonely since Dad died, and I don't know how to let people close, because everyone I love either leaves or betrays me. That building a company was easier than building a relationship, because at least with business, I could control the variables. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. Elliot, I'm not finished. He stepped closer to the desk. Yes, I hired Nora. Yes, it started as a transaction, but it became real. I fell in love with her. Actually, genuinely, fell in love with a woman who sees through my walls and calls me on my control issues and makes me want to be better than I am. And then you pushed her away? Yes, because I'm my father's son, and apparently self-sabotage runs in the family. He smiled bitterly. But I'm done with that. I'm done protecting myself from pain by avoiding joy. I love her, Mom, and I'm asking for your blessing, not your permission. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, studying him with those sharp eyes that had always seen too much. "Do you know why I gave her my dress?" she asked finally. "The one from your father's proposal? To test us?" "No, because when I saw you two together at lunch, the way you defended her without thinking, the way you looked at her like she was the only person in the room, I recognized it." Her voice grew soft. "Your father looked at me like that, like I was his whole world. I wanted you to have that, real, not performed." Elliot's throat tightened. "I thought you were angry." "I was. I am. But not because you fell in love." She stood, moved around the desk. "I'm angry because you didn't trust me with the truth, because you thought I needed to be protected from your mess instead of included in your life. I'm sorry. I know." She reached up, cupped his face like she had when he was a child. "And I forgive you, both of you. But Elliot, if you love her, you need to fight for her, properly. Not with grand declarations in restaurants. With proof, with action. Show her you're worth the risk." "I don't know how." Eleanor smiled. "Yes, you do. You just have to stop thinking like a CEO and start thinking like a man in love." They talked until 3 a.m, Eleanor asking about Nora, about how it had really developed, about what Elliot wanted. And slowly, a plan formed. 2 days later, Eleanor's car pulled up outside Morrison's Coffee at noon. Nora was inside, working on a campaign, and looked up in surprise when Eleanor slid into the seat across from her. "Eleanor, I didn't expect me, I know." Eleanor ordered a coffee from the passing barista with easy authority. "We need to talk." Nora closed her laptop, steeling herself. "If you're here to tell me to stay away from Elliot, I'm here to apologize."
Eleanor's directness cut through Nora's defenses. I handled the situation poorly. I was hurt and scared, and I took it out on both of you. That was wrong. You had every right to be angry. Angry, yes. Cruel, no. Eleanor's coffee arrived, and she took a sip before continuing. Elliot came to see me 2 nights ago. Do you know what he did? Nora shook her head, not trusting her voice. He fought, not with charm or strategy, but with raw honesty. He told me he was lonely and terrified and completely in love with you. Eleanor's smile was gentle. In 34 years, I've never seen him that vulnerable. You did that. You broke through walls I thought were permanent. Tears pricked Nora's eyes. I didn't mean to. I know. That's why it worked. Eleanor reached across the table, took Nora's hand. He's preparing something for you, a gesture, and I wanted to give you fair warning because it's going to be overwhelming and possibly insane, but it comes from a real place. What kind of gesture? The kind that proves he's been listening, that he sees who you really are and what you really want. Eleanor squeezed her hand. The question is, are you brave enough to accept it? I don't know if I can trust this. Trust him, trust myself. Trust is a choice you make every day. Some days it's easy, some days it's terrifying. But Nora, I've watched a lot of people fall in love over 62 years. What you two have is rare. Don't let fear steal it. After Eleanor left, Nora sat with her coffee going cold, trying to process the conversation. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at 428 Oak Street, your hometown, Saturday at noon. Please come. E. Her hometown. The small place she'd grown up 90 minutes from the city that she hadn't visited since her mother's funeral. Saturday arrived with painful slowness. Jenna insisted on driving her, refusing to let Nora face whatever this was alone. They pulled into the small downtown, past familiar storefronts and unchanged streets, until they reached 428 Oak Street. It was a vacant building on Main Street, windows covered with paper, but there was activity inside, construction sounds, movement, life. Elliot stood outside,
And he saw her, relief flooded his face. You came. You asked me to. Nora got out of the car slowly, Jenna staying back to give them space. What is this, Elliot? Remember when you told me you wanted to help small businesses tell their stories? That you wanted to do work that mattered, away from corporate politics and people who didn't deserve your talent? He gestured to the building. This is that, or it will be. He led her inside. The space was mid-renovation, but the vision was clear. Exposed brick, warm lighting, open floor plan divided into distinct areas. One side looked like an office space, the other like a comfortable meeting area with bookshelves and soft seating. I don't understand, Nora said, looking around. It's yours, a consultancy, Whitmore and Associates. He pulled out a folder, handed it to her. I've secured 5 local clients already, small businesses that need exactly what you offer. Authentic storytelling, brand development that doesn't feel like selling out. The LLC is in your name. You own it completely. Not me, not Grayson Capital, you. She opened the folder with shaking hands. Business registrations, client contracts, architectural plans for the space. All legitimate, all real. The contractor is waiting for your input on the final design. I gave him the basics, but it's your space, your vision. Elliot's voice was careful, like he was afraid of spooking her. This isn't about money or control. It's about giving you the foundation to build your dream without depending on me or anyone else. Why? The word came out as a whisper. Why would you do this? Because you taught me that love isn't about control or protection. It's about believing in someone enough to set them free and trusting they'll choose to stay. He moved closer, and she could see the fear and hope warring in his expression. I'm not trying to save you, Nora. You saved yourself. I'm just invested in your success as a partner. Partner, equal, in business, in life, in everything. He pulled a key from his pocket, held it out. This is yours. The building, the business, the choice. You don't owe me anything. Not your time, not your love, not anything. But I'm asking, if you want it, to build this with me.
not as my employee or my girlfriend in some transactional arrangement, but as my partner in the truest sense. Nora took the key, felt the weight of it, the weight of the choice he was offering. I'm terrified, she admitted. Me too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you. She looked at the space, at the life he'd helped create for her, at the man standing before her, offering not rescue, but partnership, and she made a choice. She kissed him, not gentle, not tentative, but fierce and claiming and absolutely certain. His arms came around her, pulling her close, and they kissed like people who'd been drowning and finally found air. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she said, "Yes, yes, yes, I'll build this with you. Yes, I'll take the risk. Yes, I love you too." She laughed through tears. "But if you disappear on me again, I won't. Never again. I promise you, Nora Whitmore, I'm done running. Good, because I'm done chasing." From the doorway, Jenna's voice called out, "Finally! Can we celebrate now, or are you two going to keep making out in an empty building?" They laughed, and Elliot kept his arm around Nora as they walked outside to where Eleanor had joined Jenna, both women grinning like conspirators. "So," Eleanor asked, "did he do well?" "He did perfectly." Nora leaned into Elliot, feeling the solid warmth of him, the reality of this new beginning. "Thank you for believing in this. Thank you for saving my stubborn son from himself." 6 months later, the grand opening of Whitmore and Associates drew a crowd that spilled onto Main Street. Local business owners, friends, even a few reporters who'd followed the story of the billionaire's girlfriend who'd chosen independence over dependence. The space was beautiful, warm and welcoming, with a wall of success stories from the clients Nora had already helped. Jenna's designs were featured prominently, her new title of creative partner displayed with pride. Elliot stood at the back, watching Nora give a speech about authentic storytelling and the importance of small businesses in community building. She was confident, radiant, completely in her element, and he'd never loved her more. When she finished to applause, she found him in the crowd, and her smile was just for him. Later, after the crowd thinned, they stood together in the space she'd built, his arms around her waist, her back against his chest. "Happy?" he asked. "Terrifyingly happy. You?" "Same." He kissed her temple. "Think we can handle it? Together?" "Absolutely." She turned in his arms, met his eyes. "I love you, Elliot, even when you're impossible and controlling and overthink everything. I love you, Nora Whitmore, especially when you call me on it." They kissed, soft and sweet, and full of promise. Outside, Eleanor watched through the window with satisfaction, then turned to Jenna. "Think they'll make it?" "Definitely. They fought too hard not to." And she was right. Because sometimes the best love stories start with coffee spills and desperate arrangements, and slowly, painfully become something real, something worth fighting for, something that looks like partnership and feels like home. The end came not with dramatic gestures, but quiet certainty, the knowledge that they'd chosen each other every day and would continue choosing each other through whatever came next. It turned out that what Vanessa couldn't steal was the most valuable thing Nora possessed, the courage to start again. And this time, she wasn't starting alone.